Ding, ding, Jonathan.
Let's all...
Ding, ding, Jonathan. Ding, ding.
Let's just...
Jonathan?
Dave's not here.
Welcome to AT Banter, the podcast where we discuss anything and everything regarding the world of assistive technology. With our hosts, Steve Barkley, Rob Minot, and Ryan Fleury. Now, let's banter.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of AT Banter. I am Rob Minot, and today I am joined by Ryan Fleury.
Hello.
And Steve Barkley.
Banter, banter.
And hey, guess what, guys?
What?
It is our big 50th episode. So we are the big 5-0.
Happy birthday. Well, not yet.
No, yeah, that's in a few weeks. But
yeah, it's November for me.
But still, 50. Can you imagine? We've made it through 50 episodes.
Can't imagine. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Crazy.
Yeah, seems like just yesterday we were all crammed into my office.
And how much money have we made doing this?
Better question, how much money has we lost doing this?
It's all about the love.
That's right. We've got love.
We do.
That's right.
But no email this week.
No email this week? Really?
Have we actually topped 1,000 listeners? Or are we just sitting below it?
Sitting below it. We haven't quite topped 1,000 yet.
All right.
Per week.
So tell all your friends we need to crack 1,000 here.
That's right.
We got some good shows coming up, so we might.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm excited for. We're having a very good month. This is going to be great because we've got our big anniversary show coming up in a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some great guests lined up.
We do.
So it's going to be a good month.
Should be.
Very exciting.
It is. And we're going to talk more tech.
And we're going to talk some more tech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You look at the notes today, I threw some tech in there.
Ooh.
Hey, fancy.
Mm-hmm. We'll get our guest to talk tech.
Well,
Because he knows all about it.
hopefully.
Better.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. Who is our guest today, Ryan?
Our guest today is Jonathan Mosen, all the way from New Zealand.
Yeah, it's like 7 o'clock in the morning there, I think, when we're going to be talking to him. So kudos to him for getting up early and talking to us.
Yeah, I hope he's a morning person. Man, you talk to me at 7 o'clock in the morning and you're not going to get a good interview.
Yeah, it was hard enough when we talked to Neil and it was 9 o'clock in the morning. We were hurting.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I think they have to get up early and stuff because there's a lot of sheep and stuff there that they have to tend to, I think. In New Zealand.
Yeah, the buying probably wakes them up anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Either that or the hobbits. There's a lot of hobbits.
Yeah.
Those hobbits get up early and making all kinds of noise, so it's probably hard to sleep in over there. No, New Zealand is nice. I would love to actually visit New Zealand.
Yeah, every picture I've ever seen in New Zealand makes me want to go there.
Yeah, really. I'd go there before Iceland. I don't know why Rick went to Iceland. Why would you go somewhere named Iceland? I grew up in Iceland. It was called Mackenzie.
Yeah, a lot of people are going there these days because you can stop there on your way to Europe and kind of break up the trip a little bit and not have as long a flight. Stop, have a look around, see if you can find yourself some gnomes, and then carry on.
Reindeer.
Yeah, Vikings,
reindeer, and I don't even know what else. I think volcanoes. Don't they have a lot of volcanoes?
Yeah,
over
they
there?
got all kinds of
thermal stuff
activity, but I don't know about volcanoes per se.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm thinking thermal stuff.
Yeah,
a lot of hot springs and.
Yeah. But they may have a volcano. Oh, hang on. Didn't they have a volcano that erupted and then screwed up air traffic?
Yeah, that's right. That was like a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Iceland.
Yeah.
Volcanoes to yourself.
Well, there goes all our Iceland.
That's right.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, indeed. You're saying, screw these guys.
Yeah, we should really do a travel show where we just talk about stuff, places we know nothing about. It's been like the most ill-informed travel show ever.
We could just make assumptions about countries and then Google it to see what our preconceived notions.
You know what I say? We
where
don't
they were
even.
wrong.
I don't even say we bother googling it. You just all you got to do is speak as if you're an authority, and people will just buy it. And
Well, that's true.
if they get to Luxembourg and it turns out it's not the biggest city, sue us. I don't know.
Yeah.
So you get for taking advice from people on the internet. I don't know what to tell you.
Right.
Well,
More of
just
that
The
fake
hard
truth.
lesson
We'll
learned.
just repeat it. No, it is. It really is. That's the way it works now.
It's an
You just
alternate
repeat
fact.
the lie. Repeat the lie.
That's right. Yeah, so we're excited to be talking to Jonathan today. He has been in the assistive technology field for over 30 years. He's helped to test assistive technology. He's helped to design it. He has worked with mainstream hardware and software developers as a consultant, and he is a pretty big blindness advocate. He's also an author, a broadcaster, a podcaster, a blogger, an accessibility specialist, and again, an advocate. He's another guest that makes us sound like lazy slobs.
Well, we technically are lazy slobs.
Good point.
Just to point that out.
Yeah, Ryan. You got to stop booking guests that are like this. That are so busy. It makes me feel bad about myself.
The guests want to come on, they're more than welcome.
The problem is the kind of guests that we need to make us look good
Oh, that's what you want.
are not even going to email us because it's too much work.
That's true. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, let's just go ahead and bring Jonathan on.
Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Jonathan. Good morning.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going all right here. You just getting up?
Doing well.
Have you had your coffee yet?
Oh, absolutely. A big mug of bulletproof coffee, nice and early.
Excellent. Well, just to let you know, I've got two co-hosts with me today. I've got Rob Minot,
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, good.
and I've got Steve Barclay.
Hey, Jonathan.
Steve.
How goes it?
Good to meet you guys.
So we just want to say thanks so much for joining us. I know it's early there.
Oh, it's 9 a.m. It's actually quite civilized. I
Oh,
generally
okay.
get up at about 3 or 4 and start working, so I'm well into my work day now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Great.
we did the math wrong. We thought it was 7.
Right.
Well, so I'm here looking at the notes on your bio, and I have to say you have a lot of fingers and a lot of pies.
I tell you, it keeps me off the streets or something. Yeah.
Well, let's talk your involvement with assistive technology and just how it all got started. Did you always have sort of a love for technology growing up?
Well, the thing is, technology kind of grew up around me because I was going to high school in the 1980s, and that's when we really started to see some developments that filtered down to the average person that went beyond the computer programmer types. And so when I was starting high school, we had the Apple IIe computers, and we had the Versa Braille, which was this crazy cassette-based machine run by a company called TSI, Telesensory,
Telesensory.
who no longer exist. But the idea was you would put a cassette into this thing, and you would store pages of Braille. And when you wanted to access a particular document on this Versa Braille, it would fast forward to the correct point on the cassette to retrieve that document, and it would shudder and shake and clunk, and it was like it was going to rip itself apart, man. But it was just so cool because we could store all this stuff, and I was one of the first people to use a Versa Braille to actually take an exam because I loved the fact that I could Braille something down and read back what I'd written and make edits. You know, this is all stuff we take for granted now, but being able to make edits, change things around, cut and paste, it was just fantastic. So I was very fortunate that I just was growing up at the right time where this technology was emerging, and for whatever reason I took a liking to it. I just had a natural aptitude for it, which was great for me because I hated PE, physical education. And what happened at high school was we had a whole bunch of blind kids going to this high school, and we had a resource room there, and they had a couple of sighted teachers who would help out all the kids going to the high school. But they would pull me out of the PE periods, which I hated, and get me to teach them how to use all this technology and whip it into shape and maybe teach other kids how to use the technology. So it just sort of happened that way that I was growing up around this stuff.
Well, Jonathan, I've got a confession for you. When I started with Aroga, I was fixing those things.
Really?
Yeah, and then I went on to the Versa Braille with the disk drive.
The
that's
VersaBraille
fancy.
2, and with that different keyboard that they had.
Yeah, and I fixed the Opticons from Telesensory, the original Navigator Braille displays, all of their CCTVs, the Vantage, the Voyager. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they were big, weren't they? See, TSI was kind of like the VFO of the 1980s, 1970s, and 80s, really. I mean, they were everywhere, and they were the dominant player, and they were doing all these blindness products and stuff like that. So they were big.
Yep. Yes, indeed.
And it's a pretty amazing time. We I think we're all around the same age. And it is pretty amazing the leap in technology from, say, the 80s, for example, to today. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, I know that people talk about success being lots of perspiration and inspiration and stuff, and I certainly agree with that. But I also think that part of what happens in your life is all about the timing. And I was just so lucky because I count myself as very fortunate that I can still remember what it was like when I would rely on a sighted sibling to read a newspaper article to me, or when I couldn't do banking independently, when you'd go into a bank and there'd be a bank teller behind the counter and you'd have to get the bank teller to read your balance to you, and because of course you were blind, everybody knows it because you're blind, you have to talk louder, and so there'd be this teller behind the counter saying, you're $500 overdrawn, Mr. Mosen. I just want to fall through the floor. So it was a really cool time just to see this technology evolving and think about how it has transformed our lives so much. It's been a great ride.
So in terms of, say, if we look back at, say, the last, 30, 40 years, what do you see as the real big leap forward? Where did we really, what technology developed that really drove everything forward?
I think if I had to pick one thing, and that's a really tough thing to do, but if I had to pick one thing, I think it would be when JAWS for Windows came out, because I can still remember all of the angst and the agony. We thought that we were making such good progress with DOS. By the time Windows came along, we really had DOS singing and humming and doing some really cool stuff. And all we could think of was Windows is pretty pictures and graphics, and it's going to lock us out. And people who were starting to think about careers in computers and doing things on the job with computers, we were really scared about Windows just taking away all of these gains that we had made. And so then, people like Glenn Gordon in particular, who's made a huge contribution to this industry, a blind guy himself, there were other products, and I think it's important to give a nod to Slimware Window Bridge, which was a really credible screen reader. It did things in a slightly unorthodox way. But when I used JAWS and the fact that they had taken a lot of their DOS paradigm into the Windows environment successfully, when I used that first copy of JAWS 1.0, it may have been 1.1, I thought we are actually going to be okay. And that's significant in itself. But what it also taught me was when we think that we are down and out, somebody is going to come along and crack the problem. And, so it turned out to be with touchscreens on cell phones. I remember touching my first iPhone in 2007, and it was just this blank piece of glass. And I thought, oh my God, this is dismal. But something told me someone would crack it. It turned out, of course, to be Apple itself that did. But so JAWS for Windows made me realize we got some pretty smart minds around the place, and that there's nothing that we can't overcome with a little bit of ingenuity and innovation and maybe some patience.
Now, do you find that these days that, this thing about somebody cracking the problem, do you find that these days that happens a lot faster than it used to?
Yes, because in those early days, accessibility belonged to hackers. And when I say hackers, I mean that word in the traditional sense of the term. Nowadays, people think about hacking as breaking into stuff they're not entitled to access. But traditionally hacking is all about doing really sort of cool behind the scenes, under the hood stuff with technology. And that's what we had to do back then. Yeah, I'm sounding like a really old, I don't know, but yeah.
I'm right with you, Jonathan.
I mean, we really had to do that then, because there was no official support in those early days when Henderjoyce, as it was then, was trying to get into Windows 3.1. There was just no thought given to accessibility by Microsoft whatsoever, and they had to hook in to the display driver in kludgy kind of ways just to get at the operating system. And Microsoft was aware of these assistive technology companies, and they kind of thought, well, that's nice. How cool is this? But there wasn't really any kind of commitment on Microsoft's part to make anything happen. So nowadays, and I can still remember even as far back as, far recently rather, as Windows XP, there was a definite gap between when Windows XP came out and when we started having reasonable enough access to it that we could put it on our computers. There was a gap. Now, when there are significant new versions of Windows, and they're coming up pretty thick and fast now, Microsoft has been talking to VFO and making all sorts of provisions and partnering. And you have things like UI automation now, which is built into the operating system itself. You got a thing called Microsoft Active Accessibility that went back to about 1995-ish. So there has been progress. So things can happen more quickly now because the world is much more aware of accessibility than it used to be.
Yeah, this is all taking me back, because I'm with you, Jonathan. I did that transition from DOS to Windows, and I'm cited. I was just the guy who was installing the software and supporting people. But our demo version of JAWS was serial number 1004.
That's right.
It was the fourth production unit to make it out, and started with Windows 3.1, lived through all of the horror of Windows 95 and 98.
Millennium.
Yeah.
Millennium was the pit.
Yeah.
But and you will remember then all the fun that we used to have trying to get JAWS to talk to serial-based synthesizers for the most part. Yeah. And we all used to have to become familiar with this concept called the IRQs. You remember the interrupts that you had to take into account when you were trying to set up a serial port for these synthesizers. And, oh, my goodness, it was geeky. I mean...
I can't tell you how many times I heard, accent ready.
We had to know a lot more about the sort of under-the-hood, behind-the-scenes stuff of our computers just to make them behave. And I'm quite glad of that in a way, because it still gives you some basic grounding that's still useful now.
Yeah, it's a whole lot simpler now to do the AT. I think back of all the times all the time I spent fighting with video drivers. And telling people, no, you can't use it with that video card. You got to get this video card. And
yes, and you'll remember this thing that came along for a while called the Device Chaining Manager. Yeah. And that was pretty revolutionary, because it did mean that you could have multiple pieces of assistive technology on the system. And, that time I was, I think, doing ACB radio. So it was important for me to be reviewing different screen readers and things. And there were a lot more of them then. But the trick was, you had to remember the order that you installed everything, because if you uninstalled something in a different order from that which was it was installed, you completely wrecked your system, and nothing talked anymore, and you just had a dog's breakfast on your hands.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah, we've come a long way.
Yeah, it's a heck of a lot easier now.
It is.
No question.
Yeah, good thing.
Yeah.
Now, I see in your bio that it mentions that you have worked with developers and as a consultant. What kind of stuff have you worked on?
Well, I joined the team at Humanware, which was then Pulse Data International, in 2003, because I'd grown up with those guys. Pulse Data was a New Zealand-based company, and so they would often send stuff for me to play with. And I've got to tell you a really crazy story. When I was a kid in high school, and I used the first Keynote device. And the first Keynote device, which is the way precursor to the Braille Note, but it was computer. This big modified Epson laptop type computer that actually had a built-in dot matrix printer, which was handy because you could go in and write a little document and then print out a note and pin it onto the fridge or something like that. It was really quite cool. But I used to test for those guys even back then when I was in high school, when I was the guinea pig because they thought I had the aptitude and I was allowed to take exams. And I remember the scandal when my classical studies notes for the year suddenly evaporated on a corrupt floppy disk. And it was great times. But even then I was testing, and there was a button you could press to change the keyboard echo. And you push this little button like a function key on the top, and it would say keyboard voice currently whatever it was set to. And I think you had spell, words, and off, I think, were the first initial choices. And the default was spell. Well, I discovered that when you turn the keyboard voice button on, if it was set to spell and you pushed the shortcut key to turn it off, it echoed the character before it switched off. Now, the thing is, the shortcut key was the letter F. So I called the developer as a precocious little high school kid and said, listen to this. And I pushed the button and it said keyboard voice currently spell. And then I pushed the key to turn it off and it said F off. And the developer was so mortified by this that next day I got a disc in the mail with a new version of the software and he fixed it. So I was most disappointed.
Oh, that's funny.
But so they called me. I was doing the ACB radio gig, and they said, we know that the Braille Note's been hugely successful, but we also know that there are things on the horizon, and we'd like you to come and manage to take over the blindness product range. And it was something I hadn't thought about doing before. I loved using technology, and I'd used it in various capacities, and I'd reviewed it a lot for Main Menu, which I started on ACB radio. But I never thought about getting involved in the industry. But then I thought, wow, this is a chance to really have some influence and to change lives for the better, and I think I can do this. And so I joined the team there and developed the Braille Note Empower, which was my project. It was a really significant project, about a 7-figure sum. I'm very proud of the Braille Note Empower because it really did take the Braille Note product line forward. But most significantly, we kept it under such tight wraps. No one knew the Braille Note Empower was coming until the day we issued a media release about it in which we said, and it's shipping now. And it's so rare in this industry to have a product that you announce and it's available on the same day, especially a really big product like a Notetaker. And we announced it about 2 days before the 2005 ACB and NFB conventions, and it just completely blew the industry away because nobody knew it was coming. So that was a lot of fun. And while I was at Pulse Data, I also worked on things like the Braille Note PK, which we were OEMing a Baum product, essentially, the Baum Pronto, but we put Keysoft on it, and we made this cool little pocket-sized device, the Brailliant, that is mine too. That in those days, at least, it was a Baum OEM product, but I named it Brailliant, and I'm quite proud of that. And we worked in those days with Code Factory to make mobile accessibility, mobile speak more available on Windows Mobile and Symbian platforms. So we worked with them. And then in 2006, I jumped ship, and that was rather controversial at the time, and I moved over to Freedom Scientific, and I became the vice president of blindness hardware. Wow. And so looked after Braille displays. We did a couple of generations of Focus, the PackMate Omni, and various software packages that run on the PackMate Omni, and a whole bunch of other stuff like that. More recently, I do a lot of consultancy on mobile apps and work with developers often who don't necessarily want people to know that I'm working on them, and that's fine. I sort of work behind the scenes a lot now with some pretty significant players who just need a real blind person who understands product development to give them feedback on what's going on and what they might need to do to fix it. So it's been a blast. And, one of the most amazing things was when I went to South Africa on business, and I met a guy who had been involved in the agreement that was reached between the African National Congress and the outgoing apartheid-based regime. And he had helped negotiate the new constitution to write that. He was a lawyer, and he said that the Braille note he was using was indispensable. It had made a huge difference in his life. And when I meet people like that who have used something that I've had a hand in designing or developing, it makes you feel really good, because it makes you feel like you've made a difference.
Yeah, no doubt. I was just thinking back, that Epson, that early Epson with the printer. I never used it with Keysoft on it, but we used it for a communication aid for the nonverbal for a while. I replaced a lot of batteries in those things, and then there was another Braille note that came out after that was on a little, like a subnote sized computer with a battery on the side of it. I'm trying to remember who made that.
Yeah, it's not ringing any bells, but yeah, there are a lot of these products around, and they struck gold with the Braille note. It just came out at the right time. The Blazy products had kind of got, the Blazy products were fantastic because everything was in RAM, and you could quickly load files and do things. But people wanted email, and they wanted to be able to browse the web and all those things, and the Blazy products just didn't do it. And so the Braille note came along at the right time. It was running Windows CE, which was sort of state of the art then. It was a very user-friendly thing because the Braille note was, and probably still is, very big in education markets. So again, it was just fantastic timing, and those things just flew off the shelves.
This is something we've talked about before in previous podcasts, but I've been incorrectly predicting for years the demise of the Braille Notetaker, the dedicated Braille Notetaker, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on that, because I've always thought that it would move aside for things like Braille displays tethered to mainstream devices, and then Humanware comes out with the Braille Note Touch, and it's very successful and just completely throws my thinking out the door. Just wondering what you see as being the future of the dedicated note taker market.
I think that there is one company that we have to thank for the longevity of the dedicated note taker market, and that is Apple. And we in the blind community, while I'm very grateful for everything that Apple has done, and they changed the game big time, no doubt, just completely upturned the game on its head. But we do give Apple a bigger free pass than I think we give any other company in our community. And I don't quite know why that is. Perhaps there's just so much goodwill for what they did in 2009 that it will go on indefinitely. But look, if the Braille support in Apple products was decent, then teachers would take an iPad that they know and love and understand, and there's no special proprietary commands to memorize or remember, a new product to learn that's blindness specific, and they would be giving kids everywhere iPads, and that would be the end. But Apple's Braille support, especially when it comes to Braille input, is not there. It's awful. There are all sorts of weird anomalies when you try to make a correction when contracted Braille is enabled, and you can't give that to kids. Kids are supposed to be concentrating on reading and writing, not going through hoops to try and make the Braille behave itself, because you write a single letter in the middle of a word and all of a sudden that single letter has been expanded to its contracted equivalent right in the middle of the word. It's horrible. Now, that said, Android is far, far worse. Android Braille is just so bad. So I think that's why they continue, because these mainstream companies do not get Braille. None of them get Braille. And until one of them does that, then these things will continue. But I do think that the L Braille is going to be a huge game changer, because you've got an integrated device that's running full Windows. And you see, because there are so many blind people working on JAWS who are Braille users, the Braille support is really robust. And what I mean by that is, if you go into, say, a Microsoft Word document and you Braille away on your Braille device that has a Braille input keyboard, and you make a correction and you have to route the cursor to the middle of the word and you make a correction, it does what it should. It's extremely smart about working with contracted Braille. It's like you've opened a Microsoft Word document and you're working with a native grade 2 Braille file. So when you can have that on a screenless integrated Braille device that has 20 hours of battery life and run full Windows, so you can run your proper Microsoft Office and even do audio production and all those things on a note-taker type device, why would you bother with a compromise like Android or Windows CE is sort of out of the game anyway. But why would you not just go with full Windows? And so that, I think, is the game changer.
What can you tell us about the L Braille?
It rocks, mate. I've got one here.
Well, I know I've listened to a couple past episodes of the Blindside podcast, and I think you use Studio Recorder to record your TV review. But yeah, tell us a little bit about the L Braille, what it is, how it works.
The L Braille is an integration of two technologies, broadly speaking. So you've got a small dock that's running full Windows 10, and into that dock you slot a Focus 14, and JAWS is running on the device. The cool thing about the way this is being priced is that you only buy what you don't currently have. So obviously everybody doesn't have the L Braille dock, but if you have a Focus 14 already and you have a JAWS license already, then you just discount those from the purchase price, which I think is a really sensible idea.
Absolutely.
It's got built-in LTE, and you just pop in a SIM card. So when I've been doing the beta testing for this, I find myself in the back of an Uber or a cab, and I got some time to kill. I can just fire up the L Braille. It's online through LTE, and I'm quickly working with Microsoft Outlook and sending things. You know, you can put all your browsers, Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, have them all on there. I have Dropbox on it, so, and of course Windows 10 comes with OneDrive. So anything I do on my other devices, because I save to the cloud anyway with one of those services, it's all just appearing magically on the L Braille for when I'm mobile with it. And of course you can plug in a USB keyboard if you're in the office and you want to work with a full keyboard, which is what I was doing when I was producing the podcast with it. Or you can use a Bluetooth keyboard. So it's good. The one criticism people may level at it, and I think, fair enough, it does have 2 gigs of RAM, and that means that while I can run Studio Recorder, and I find that adequate, which is the APH product, I don't know if I'd want to run something really huge like SoundForge on it. I think it would bog down with a really big app like SoundForge. That's a constraint of what's available now with this particular portable technology. My understanding is that will, like everything, improve in the future. But if you just want to do your documents and surf the web and do your email and stuff on a device that gives you 20 hours of battery life and runs Windows, that's the key thing, then this is a pretty significant development, I think. For me, it's the product I've been waiting for.
What does it have under the hood? What's the processor?
Gosh, off the top of my head, I don't recall. There is an L Braille English website, and I think it's something like lbraille.com, but you can Google for L Braille, and all those specs are there. It's not a mega fast processor, but again, I think the issue here is that you do have a series of compromises, because what a lot of people miss about working with a laptop is that battery life thing, the fact that you can, like in the old Braille Note or Blazy days, you could take something with you and know that it's going to go all day and maybe into a second day if you can't get access to a wall outlet, and that's a significant thing for students, for example. So there are those compromises. The more you crank it up, the more energy it's going to use, and the less the battery life will be. So it will definitely meet a niche. And your prediction of the demise of the traditional note taker, I think is probably going to come true with technologies like this.
See, so just be patient, Steve. It'll happen.
Yeah. One day I'll be right.
That's right.
It may be after the asteroid smacks into the Earth. But
Then you can say, I told you so.
see, no note takers.
Yeah.
As the tsunami washes over me.
So have you found that as the technology gets better, that the level of instruction in terms of how to use a lot of these devices for people who aren't familiar with them has gotten a little bit easier? Like, are they a little bit more palpable to people?
Possibly. I think it depends on the technology that you're using. One of the things I really do like very much about Android is that when you turn on TalkBack for the first time, and you've got a new Android device out of the box, you get a really great experience that teaches a new user the gestures
Right.
and how to work with it. And I think that's really nice. It's a very user-friendly approach. Apple, not so much. When you run VoiceOver for the first time, you actually get a little warning for sighted people now that says, hey, you just turn VoiceOver on, and this is a screen reader for blind people, and it's changed your gestures, and it tells you how to turn it off again. But it doesn't actually say to a blind person, welcome to VoiceOver, and here's how you use it, which is interesting because on the Mac it actually does.
Right.
The Mac has a wonderful VoiceOver tutorial for the first time you start it, and I think it's extremely well done. So maybe we will see that in the future. So it does vary a bit, and I guess that's one of the things that I do as well, and have done in various guises for a long time, is that I guess I've been quite fortunate in that, as well as being able to absorb this knowledge for whatever reason, and finding technology quite intuitive, I'm able to sort of spit it out the other end in an intuitive way, so that I can try and explain technology to people, not just how to use the technology, but why you might want to, and the impact that a particular piece of technology could possibly have on your life if you chose to learn it.
And, you've written a few books on iOS as well. Are you currently working on a new one?
Yeah, we have the series. It's our biggest seller, and the series is called iOS Without the I, and we started it in 2013 when Mosen Consulting started with iOS 7 without the I. And so iOS 11 without the I will be out in September, and that will be so. What we do, there's a lot of material out there that teaches you how to use the iPhone when you get it, and in fact we've done that too. I produced under contract with a VFO a series of audio modules. I think it's up to about 12 or 13 hours now, that talks you through literally taking your iPhone out of its packaging, setting it up for the first time. If you have to put a SIM card in, we teach you how to put the SIM card in. It's really elementary stuff working all the way through. But the iOS 7 and upwards without the I series is all about people who already have iOS and they want a comprehensive resource that says to them, this is what's new this year in iOS, and this is how you use it. And it's been really, really popular. I'm grateful for that.
What other types of publications do you do?
I guess let's see. We've got the book on Sonos, which is another popular bestseller called Sonosthesia, and if I wasn't watching my carbs, I'd have a big scoop of chocolate ice cream when I thought that went up. Sonosthesia is all about using the Sonos technology, and that's also very popular because blind people care about their audio generally, and Sonos is a wonderful ecosystem. And so I describe the Sonos product range, when you might use a particular Sonos device, and then we go through and talk about how to use Sonos on a range of platforms. We've got a book on Twitter that I'm currently updating with a second edition. We've got Amadeus Pro for the Mac, and a general webinar that we did about how to record technology demos effectively. We partner with people now because a lot of people approached us and said, yeah, you guys have got the infrastructure. You've got a great e-commerce platform now that's accessible. You've got the word out. People know where to go to find you. And can we come on board? So we came up with a structure where we can now work with partner authors who write books, and then we take a small commission for marketing and selling them, and they take the majority. for the work that they've done. And so we have a book that was written on that basis that covers working with Pages on the Mac, the word processor. Another one that reviews Braille displays, because they're really expensive devices and it can be hard to get your hands on them. And so one author who's very talented with Braille has written a thing called Braille on Display, and we intend to update that annually. It's kind of like an annual buyer's guide to the Braille displays that are on the market at any given time. We've got a book on Apple TV, and we have one for the 3rd generation and one for the 4th. My wife, Bonnie, who's a partner in Mosen Consulting, wrote a very popular title on being job ready when you're a blind person, and some techniques about CVs, how to format them appropriately when you're blind, and the different types of CV, the job interview, a whole bunch of things. When do you disclose? At what point do you disclose that you have a disability? A whole bunch of things like that. So I'm probably leaving some titles out, but there's a decent selection in the store now.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting because we got an email last week and from a listener who is blind and wanted some resources on keyboard shortcuts and some of the accessibility features in Windows 10. And when you look, it's surprising how little is actually out there in terms of resources for
structured resources.
Yeah. So it's fantastic that you guys are working on all these books, because that's something that I feel, anyways, really needs to be improved.
Yeah, I agree, and I enjoy writing them. I enjoy trying to explain things in a way that hopefully people can understand. One of the downsides is that people kind of treat us as if we're tech support for the company that we write about,
right?
And sometimes I have to be a little bit gentle, or sometimes even a bit firm, and say, look, if you've got a problem with your iPhone, I mean, you can pay us to give you one-on-one training, and we'll gladly do that. But we can't provide you with free tech support, because Apple's got a whole team of people they pay to do that, and we got to put food on the table somehow. Mm-hmm. So it is a difficult thing, because it's my natural disposition to help people, but I could sit here answering emails from people all day who expect me or asking me to provide them with information for free. So what I try to do is sell these books at a reasonable price. So iOS without the I, those books individually, I think we've been selling them at $19.95, which I think is pretty reasonable given the small size of the market and how long they take to write. The downside of that is I like doing them, and I know they make a difference, and we'll keep doing them. But in recent times, as the company has become more well-known, the consultancy work has really started pouring in. And so I have less time to write those books. And the reality is that the consultancy work is a better earner. So, we also do web design now, because there's an increasing number of people who want somebody who can come in and design a site that looks visually attractive but is fully accessible. And so we work with government entities, we work with individuals. We have a graphic designer on our team who does graphics. And we're in a cool position, because not only can we design an accessible website and verify that it's accessible, but because of our authoring credentials, we can, if we need to, actually write pretty good content. And so for a blind person, say, starting a small business, we can do the whole package. We can design them a logo, we can put them get them up and running with an accessible website, and we can create kick-butt content that markets what they're selling in the best possible way.
Right. Now, you also have a podcast called The Blindside. What can you tell us about that? What do you guys talk about on that?
Anything. So The Blindside is a labor of love on my part, and I was probably a bit silly to take it on. But the thing is, this is a new version of a show that I started with even before ACB Radio. And in early 1999, I started a show called Blind Line. And this was streaming on the internet. And there was so much novelty in those days about the internet being able to bring the blind community together. So radio has always brought communities together. And you can talk about what's going on in your local neighborhood, in your town on the radio. But internet radio meant that blind people from all around the world for the first time could get together and hear each other's voices, talking about the challenges that are unique to our community as a blind community. And so people would call in, even making an international call to a New Zealand number if that's what it took, because there was such a thirst for this kind of community spirit. And so I did Blind Line when I left ACB Radio. That kind of got put on the back burner, obviously. Now, in this podcast era, the Blindside does a wide range of issues, but all with some sort of blindness angle. So we do cover politics. We cover quite controversial social issues. Probably the most controversial thing we ever did was one on atheism. We've done technology. We've done health and sort of subject of healthy eating. We're about to do one on technology to help you keep fit. And so it's a real, but basically what we're saying in this podcast is blindness isn't just about technology. It impacts on everything we do in some way or other. And so we want to canvass the whole range of factors that influence that. And so it gives me a pretty wide range to interview a wide range of people and talk about a wide range of topics.
Awesome. Did you write down all those ideas there, Ryan, for future podcasts?
Yeah, write that down.
Yeah, well, yeah, we do a lot of similar things too. We have a lot of different topics, human interest type stories. It's not all an AT bent. So it's really interesting just hearing other people's stories and experiences and, challenges that they've faced, either overcoming obstacles or, getting to where they are now from where they started. So, yeah, having a podcast is quite unique and, quite interesting for me anyway.
Yeah,
I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, when we started out, this podcast was, originally it was going to be like maybe 20 minutes, and it was just going to be talking about product, like different AT products. And that quickly went out the window. I mean, once we started having people on the show and telling us their stories and stuff, it quickly changed into, it's actually pretty rare for us to sit down and talk a lot of tech. I mean, today we've been pretty nerdy.
Yeah.
which is fun. I mean,
absolutely.
It's been a while since we've had a chance to really dive into a lot of AT related stuff. So,
well, and while we have you, Jonathan, I'm totally blind myself, and I have to thank you for actually telling me that my Apple TV 4th generation actually had a descriptive audio section in the Netflix app, because I didn't notice that before. I'd never seen that before. I'd always used my computer to go to Netflix and go to the descriptive video section that way. So now that I know it's there, yeah, thank you.
We've just got another way of watching Netflix, and this has been a really big episode we did on the Blindside as we record this last week.
Yeah, you're going to make me jealous.
Yeah, we bought this Android this TV. It's a 49 inch. Yeah, 49 inch. That's right. I had this big negotiating session between my wife and my children. My children wanted some sort of massive 60-something inch 3D thing. And Bonnie said, no, you can have 40 inches. And I said, how about we compromise at sort of 50? But that runs Netflix, and it all talks. And I've even got Eloquence running on it. And
wow.
So, it's really exciting. And the other thing that's exciting too is, I think, voice is probably the next big frontier. Everybody was wondering, where do we go after touch? And when you look at technologies like the Amazon Echo family and the Google Home, it looks like at the Worldwide Developers Conference that's coming up at the beginning of June, Apple is going to announce an entrant in that space as well, based on their Beats speaker technology and Siri.
Yeah.
So this is good, because just by happenstance, this new focus on voice as the primary input just suits us as blind people down to the ground, and I think it's quite exciting.
Yeah, and I just saw a tweet this morning from one of the guests or hosts on Windows Weekly that Microsoft is releasing, and Harman Kardon releasing a Cortana standalone speaker unit as well.
Well, we'll miss out on that, because after time, Cortana is not even available in New Zealand. So
really,
I love what Microsoft is doing with all, they have really, when you consider how nobody felt in the blind community at least particularly good about Microsoft a few years ago. It was sort of the company that we had to use to be productive on the job and things like that. But boy, have they really got it in the last couple of years. So hopefully Cortana will come here eventually.
Yeah, well, I have an Amazon Echo and a Google Home, and I actually couldn't get either because I live in Canada. I actually had to get them off eBay. I couldn't get them from the Google store or from Amazon.
Yeah, we're in the same position. So we've got an Echo, and it's interesting because my wife is a very smart lady, but she's not a geek like me, and we're sort of I guess I'm too prone to geekify our household. So when we got the Echo, she was thrilled, and when I see her using the Echo, it makes me realize just what a powerful user interface voice is. But we had to do the same thing. There's a freight forwarding service that our local postal service actually runs because they could see a business opportunity, and they give you a shipping address in the US, another one in the UK, and another one in China.
Oh, wow.
And then you can just go on to Amazon or wherever, give them your appropriate shipping address, the US one, and then our postal service intercepts it and forwards it on for a fee.
Amazing.
Nice.
But like I said, I listened to the Blindside podcast, and I'm really jealous about your new TV and the talking guide. And you know, I've like my TV. The only speaking part of it is the Apple TV. So, you know, I think my next TV will be a Sony Bravia.
Yeah, they've done well. And you know, I think appliances are still a tricky point. If you go shopping for, say, a dishwasher or a washing machine, or even a fridge to some extent now, you have to be a bit careful as a blind person because these devices are becoming smart, but not necessarily accessible at this point. But hopefully with technologies like HomeKit, and even the Echo, you know, which is working with a range of home automation solutions, we will crack that as well. I'm very optimistic, actually.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I listened to another podcast called the IoT Podcast, and it sounds like a lot of the issues around a lot of these appliances is security, and they really have to get on board and tighten the security that's available on these devices so they don't get hacked.
Yeah, there've already been a couple of pretty scary examples of where security isn't sufficient. And I mean, these things are little computers with their own IP address. So, there's got to be some industry-wide standard agreed upon that deals with that.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't want some hacker turning up my heat.
Turning your oven on.
Some guy from sitting in Russia.
Or filling your bathtubs or something and flooding the house. You know, I mean, anything's possible.
Exactly.
Yeah, that brings a whole new concept of WikiLeaks, doesn't it?
That's right. We used to have people hacking into baby monitors. Now they're hacking into your appliances.
Yeah.
Stop making toast.
That's right.
Damn it. I'm almost out of bread.
Damn it, they thawed my orange juice. First world problems.
Yeah, that's right. Where can people find Mosen Consulting on the internet? Where, if they're interested in some of the books, or where can they find the podcast?
The key place is mosen.org. That's MOSEN.org. And you'll find a link to the Blindside podcast, to our store, and also to Mushroom FM, which is the internet radio station that we run. So there's a lot there.
You know, we didn't even touch on that either.
Yeah, I've just started in the last 2 weeks listening to Mushroom FM, so through my Amazon Echo.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
How are you liking it?
It's a lot of fun.
Excellent. Jonathan, anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to plug or talk about?
No, I really appreciate the questions and the chance to chat and do a bit of reminiscing. The more I do these things, the older I realize I'm getting. It's fun to appreciate how far we've come. And I sort of figure, man, you know, if we've done this in the last 35 years, you just wonder what we'll be dealing with in the next 35. So I hope to be around to see it. Well,
you know, hopefully it doesn't sound like the self-driving cars, I think, are going to be the real next big leap forward. And I'm pretty excited about that.
You know, we did a show on Mushroom FM. Bonnie and I do a live call-in talk show called A Cuppa at the Mosens, and we cover blindness-related topics every week. And one of the topics that we covered a few weeks ago was, would you be first in line to get a self-driving car? And it really interested me how many blind people said, I'm really scared of these self-driving cars. I don't think I would be comfortable being in a car that drives itself over which I have no control. But I'll tell you what, I'll be there in a heartbeat. I want to be the first person in New Zealand to own a self-driving car.
Yeah, my only concern is the other drivers. I have total faith in computational abilities. It can react faster than anything else on the road. But it's the other drivers who, forget the rules of the road that I'm concerned about.
Yeah, maybe we should just switch over to self-driving cars all at once.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
There are some really interesting ethical questions, though. Like a self-driving car will have to make a very rational, as you say, computational decision. If you're driving along and the self-driving car knows that it's coming up to an incident where if it allows itself to swerve and go over a bank, it kills you. But if it continues along, it kills, say, a carload that includes, say, 3 children.
Right.
What does it do?
It kills the carload of the 3 children because Ryan owns the car.
Yeah.
It's not working for those 3 kids.
Really interesting ethical dilemmas about that.
That is interesting. Huh.
Well, let's work on the flying cars then. We've got the
self-flying car.
Well, we've got the Uber Lyft in Vegas, picking you up and dropping you off.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yep. I can do that. Although we don't even have Uber here yet, so.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, Vancouver is just got their head up their arse.
Yeah, we love Uber. I know they get a bit of bad press about different things, but we've had really good experiences with Uber. And I managed to crack our Amazon Echo to make it realize we're in New Zealand, and so now we can just say to it, "Call me an Uber," and it says, "Okay,
really?
you're an Uber." No, it actually does call.
Nice.
It does call the Uber, and you can do it with Siri. You get information. I have an Uber account for our family, so whenever one of my kids is in a spot, they know that they can get an Uber to get them out of that spot, and I get a notification that they're in one and how much it's cost and stuff. So I'm a big fan.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I can't wait for it to get here.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
All right, Jonathan. Well, thank you so much again for joining us, especially so early.
It's a pleasure. Glad to do it.
Really appreciate it.
And we'll definitely be tuning into the podcast for sure. And I got to check out Mushroom FM.
And we'll link to everything in the show notes.
We will.
Do check it out if you like 50s through the 80s music. So nothing terribly new and modern, but what we do, I think we're doing pretty well.
It's okay. We're all old guys here. That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Excellent.
Perfect, Jonathan. Okay, well, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again.
It's my pleasure. Thanks.
Thank
Okay,
you.
take care.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, that's a busy guy. A guy that has been around the block and then some.
He goes way back.
He does. He's almost, yeah. I saw Steve's eyes glaze over with nostalgia at all that
telesensory
geekery.
talk.
Are you kidding? That's my stuff back then.
That's right.
That's when the world made sense to me. Fixing Opticons and
That's right.
replacing cables and batteries. And yeah, not all this newfangled business stuff and accounting.
Cheers was on
That's
TV.
just weird.
Yeah.
Recording on computers. This crazy talk.
Yeah. Star Trek: The Next Generation was in its first run.
Yep.
The good old days.
All right. The Amazon Alexa joke of the week.
Okay.
What do you call a short fortune teller hiding from the police?
Small, medium, at large.
That's it. Ding, 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 ding.
Nice, nice. You know, if you're going to do an Alexa joke of the week, you should probably bring your Alexa down here for Alexa to actually do it instead of you. Yeah, well, yeah. So next week,
Bring Alexa down.
bring her down.
All right.
Hey, Ryan,
Hey, Rob.
where the heck can people find us?
They can find us at www.atbanter.com.
They certainly can, for all our episodes, past and present. They can also follow us on Facebook if they search just AT Banter, all one word, and Twitter at AT_Banter. Where the hell else can people find us, Steve?
Well, they can email us. We've got an email address.
Yes, they can.
We do.
atbanterpodcast@gmail.com.
Fire us an email. Tell us how we're doing.
Yeah, come on, guys. What's with the lack of email? We're getting no email.
No email love.
We need some love.
We got one email last week.
We did.
Yeah,
Thanks, Bev, for doing
and that was exciting. That was a high point of our day. So come on.
It really was. You
Flip us an
really
email.
you make a bunch of old guys very happy.
atbanterpodcast@gmail.com.
Just say hi. Just say hey.
Tell us what your favorite retro piece of AT tech is, and Steve will get all glazy-eyed nostalgic again.
All right, let's get out of here, boys.
All right. Places to go, people to see.
Pitter
That's right.
patter.
Thanks, everybody, for listening in. And what do we got next week going on, Ryan?
All right. Next week, we have a guest from Google Accessibility joining us to talk about Android and Google Accessibility.
Woohoo.
All right.
Should be a good show, too.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Thanks again for listening in, and we will see you next week.
I've been Rob Minot.
And I've been Steve Barkley.
And I'm still Ryan Fleury.
We'll see you next week.
This podcast has been brought to you by Canadian Assistive Technology, providing low vision and blindness solutions across Canada. Find us online at www.canasstech.com. That's CANASSTECH.com. Or call us toll free at 1-844-795-8324. For all your assistive technology servicing needs, call Chaos Technical Services at 778-847-6840 or find them online at chaostechnicalservices.com. Music provided by bensound.com.